Ms. Paige Buckley.
Good morning, Your Honors.
In today's trial, she'll be delivering the closing summation and argument. To my far right is Mr. Adrian Camacho.
Good morning, Your Honors.
Mr. Camacho will be presenting the opening statement for the defense.
Can you guys wait one moment, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please state the prosecution's names again, please.
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Vivian Eunice, and I think that was Christy York and Bailey House.
Thank you. I think we're missing something.
All right, go ahead.
Your Honor, also before we begin, we'd like to present you with copies of the Milton's Rules of Evidence, and the Penal Code stipulation for the case. I'll be able to have it for your reference for trial.
Sure. Yes.
And also, Your Honor, we'd like to draw your attention to the character evidence form, which has been signed by both parties prior to trial. And I will be coming in with you. Furthermore, Your Honor, we would request free movement about the well within reason for both parties.
You can.
And also we would ask your preferences as to approaching the bench and the witness, whether you'd like us to ask permission or whether free movement would be.
You can freely approach the witness.
Now, also, we'd like to draw your attention to Special Instruction 14, which allows us to enter a demonstrative and make use of a demonstrative without necessarily entering in a map that we'll be referring to actually into evidence at that time.
What do you mean by a map?
We'll be offering into evidence a map of the amusement park, which we'll be discussing during trial today. Just for the court's reference, we'll be using a demonstrative to show where things happened. But we're not required to enter that map into evidence, merely just using it as a demonstrative.
Oh.
There is no objection to that, Your Honor.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And also, lastly, Your Honor, we would request constructive sequestration of all witnesses in the case except for both party representatives, and the prosecution designates Francis Kimball, the detective in this case, as the party representative.
That's fine.
And with that, we're ready to proceed.
Okay, hold on one moment, please. All right, go ahead.
Your Honor, the defense has a few pre-trial matters.
Sure.
Since this is constructively a jury trial, would we like us to consider you the judge and the jury constructively?
Yes.
Would you like us to direct our statements to you as the members of the jury?
Sure.
Yes, Your Honor. With that, the defense is ready to proceed.
Okay. You may proceed.
Opening statement, Your Honor.
Before you begin, can you say your name again?
Certainly. My name is Bailey Arlinghouse, Your Honor.
I proceed? Get in, get out, and get even. The makings of Whit Bowman's perfect plan. Now let's walk through the events of today's trial. But first, let's consider the defendant. Members of the jury, Whit Bowman, the defendant in today's trial, was a returning seasonal employee at the amusement park of Rockterworld in the summer of 2012, last year. But Whit Bowman was not satisfied with the raise it received. In fact, it just didn't seem to be enough. They took matters into their own hands. They had to get their own hands in on the money they thought they deserved. They had to get even with their boss for an insufficient raise. Because they thought, hey, I'm worth more than that. So Whit Bowman devised a skimming scheme, members of the jury. A skimming scheme to take money off the till in Rockterworld, $15 at a time. But this scheme didn't happen alone, members of the jury. You see, Whit Bowman had an accomplice. And this accomplice was Cameron Poole. But they didn't meet at Rockterworld. Members of the jury, as you'll see today in trial, they met as old friends. And they worked together before to steal money from their boss in a different instance. Now, as far as Rockterworld is concerned, when a customer came to the amusement park, they would visit the ticket booth, first off, to buy their admission passes. And Whit Bowman encouraged his boss, Mr. J.C. Longstreet, to hire Cameron Poole and place him in the ticket booth specifically. Now, when a customer came to buy the premium World Tour admission pass, instead of presenting them with a real World Tour admission bracelet, he left that on the roll and presented this individual with a fake World Tour admission pass, charging them $35. But he only recorded in the machine as a regular admission pass, costing $20. So the machine said $20 had only been received. He pocketed the extra $15. But this scheme couldn't go on forever, members of the jury, because Mr. J.C. Longstreet and his accountant noticed changes in their revenue. They became suspicious. And this was a problem because Cameron Poole and Whit Bowman were going to get caught. They got desperate. They had to get into the ticket booth one last time, secure any remaining evidence of their scheme, and get out of the park, getting even with Mr. Longstreet. And that's exactly what happened, members of the jury, as you'll see on August 30th of 2012, last year. You see, Whit Bowman encouraged Cameron Poole to go and rob the park accountant in the ticket booth at knife point. As you'll hear today, Whit Bowman supplied the knife for this armed robbery. And meanwhile, Whit Bowman secured the Tunnel of Terror as an escape route for his accomplice, Cameron Poole. Now, members of the jury, Whit Bowman has been charged with 2 items that we're here to discuss in court today. And that includes theft by deception and robbery in the first degree. Now, as far as theft by deception, Whit Bowman has been charged for carrying out this skimming scheme in conjunction with Cameron Poole. In fact, they worked in complicity. They worked together. Whit Bowman knowingly helped to orchestrate this crime and carried out this theft by a false impression during the summer of 2012. Furthermore, Whit Bowman has been charged with robbery in the first degree, for supplying this knife to Haley Floyd, for encouraging the armed robbery, members of the jury, and securing the escape route for his accomplice, Cameron Poole, in the summer of 2012. Now, we as the prosecution bear the burden of proof in today's trial. We have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt Whit Bowman is guilty of these crimes, and we will do so by calling 3 witnesses. You'll hear from the park owner, Mr. Longstreet, and how he saw Cameron Poole and Whit Bowman stealing from Rockterworld $15 at a time. And you'll also hear from Detective Francis Kimball, who found text messages linking these 2 accomplices on the day of the robbery last year. And finally, you'll hear from Rory Shelton, who not only heard the planning of these crimes, but also, as park mascot, saw the knife being transferred from Whit Bowman to Cameron Poole. Today is not a victimless trial. Rockterworld has lost thousands of dollars. We ask you to remember who supplied the knife and who secured the escape route. Members of the jury, Whit Bowman got in, got out, and got even. Gentlemen.
Adrian Camacho for the defense. May it please the court? Your Honor, opposing counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, why are we here? Today you will learn that on August 30th of 2012, the ticket booth operator for Rock the World Amusement Park named Cameron Poole was fired for stealing. His method was simple. See, there are two types of admission bracelets to get into Rock the World. The regular admission bracelet, which is $20, and the more premium World Tour Pass, which is $35. All Cameron Poole did was simply ring up any cash payments of the World Tour bracelets as the regular admission. He would then hand over a fake bracelet to the customer and keep the $15 difference for himself. Now, after getting fired, it was Cameron Poole who returned back to the park with a knife. It was Cameron Poole who threatened and robbed the accountant, Haley Floyd, with that knife. And it was Cameron Poole who got chased by security and escaped. But, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this trial is not for Cameron Poole. So why are we here? Now, the prosecution has filed two separate charges against Whit Bowman. The first charge would be theft by deception. And theft by deception simply means that Whit Bowman, acting alone or in complicity, would have had to deprive Rock the World of $500 or more by creating a false impression. The second charge is robbery in the first degree. And to prove this, the prosecution must show you that Whit Bowman, once again, acting alone or in complicity, threatened the accountant, Haley Floyd, with the use of physical force, with the intention to rob, and with the use of a deadly weapon. Now, both of these counts include complicity. And complicity simply means that Whit Bowman would have had to know and help Cameron Poole in the plotting of his scheme and the robbery that took place at Rock the World. We as a defense carry no burden of proof. The burden of proof rests solely on the prosecution. And what this means is that they must prove to you each and every element to their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, what a reasonable doubt simply means is that if, after hearing all the evidence presented to you today, if you have any doubt in your mind based upon a reason or common sense, then you must find Whit Bowman not guilty. Today, we as a defense will be calling 3 witnesses to show you just how much doubt there is in this case. First, we'll be calling Jackie Hunter, and she will come before you and tell you that there were fake wristbands years before Whit Bowman ever showed up at the park. Second, we'll be calling the victim of the robbery, Haley Floyd. And Haley Floyd will come and tell you that she doesn't believe that Whit Bowman would have ever been involved in something like this, and that she, as the accountant, had her own private investigation, which revealed that there was a money problem leading to the ticket booth. The ticket booth that was operated by none other than Cameron Poole. Now, lastly, we'll be calling Charlie Kaminsky, a limo driver who overheard the conversation between Whit Bowman and Cameron Poole. And he will come before you and tell you that Whit Bowman told Cameron Poole he had nothing to do with Cameron Poole's intentions for the park. Now, so ladies and gentlemen, why are we here? At the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Ms. Paige Buckley, will come before you and tell you why we're here. And she'll tell you that the prosecution got it all wrong, and that you must find Whit Bowman not guilty. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Are you ready, Your Honors?
Yeah.
At this point, the state would like to call its first witness, Mr. Charles Longstreet.
State your name, please.
Christy Allenberg, for the prosecution. Prior to testimony, we ask permission to set up a courtroom for use of a demonstrative.
Your Honor, I just asked when the opposing counsel uses the demonstrative, I'd be able to move in order to see it.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Who's the witness again?
J.C. Longstreet.
Thank you.
Mr. Longstreet, please introduce yourself to the court, spelling your last name for the record.
My name is John Charles Longstreet, Longstreet.
And what is your involvement in today's case?
Well, I'm the owner and chief executive of Rock the World Amusement Park.
What are your typical duties at Rock the World?
Well, Rock the World has a very small administrative staff, so I have to do a bit of everything. It can be a bit challenging to stay on top of sometimes, but one of my chief duties is to ensure that we have an efficient, low-cost workforce. So to do that, I have to fill all employee positions, set all employee salaries, compile employee regulations and an employee manual, oversee all of our employees' mandatory training, and then put together ride operation schedules for all our employees.
Mr. Longstreet, are there any other duties of note you would like to share with the court today?
let's see, I have to approve all financial statements. I have to ensure that all of our rides and facilities are properly maintained, that the park is secure enough that our guests feel safe. And then on top of all of that, I have to make sure that we operate profitably so that we can stay in business and continue to offer the families of Midlands a place to spend time together.
Mr. Longstreet, have you been successful in maintaining profitable business?
Well, for the most part, except last summer, I noticed that our ticket revenues had taken a dive, and that concerned me.
What did you do when you noticed this?
I sat down with our accountant, Haley Floyd, and looked over the numbers.
Would you recognize those numbers if I showed them to you?
Yes, I would.
Permission to approach opposing counsel and the witness with a document?
You may.
Thank you. Mr. Longstreet, could you identify this document for us?
Yes, this is the Rockford World accounting spreadsheet.
And has it been changed in any way?
It has not.
Is it a fair and accurate representation?
It is.
And do you have any role in keeping this document?
Yes, I have to approve all the daily numbers we get from around the park before they can go on here.
At this point, Your Honor, I request that the Rockford World accounting spreadsheets be entered into evidence as prosecution exhibit 1.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay at this point.
Your Honor, there is an exception for hearsay that these accounting spreadsheets fall under. That would be Rule 8036, a record of regularly conducted activity. The business activity that is regularly conducted, kept in this spreadsheet, is the incoming and outgoing revenue at Rockford World. Mr. Longstreet has noted that this is kept on a daily basis, therefore it is regularly kept business. And furthermore, Mr. Longstreet is qualified to testify about this spreadsheet as he is the keeper, custodian, and a verifier of these facts.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Under Rule 8036, there are 5 prongs in order to lay foundation for this document to come in under that exception. She has laid 4 of the 5 prongs. I would just ask that the first prong, whether the record was made at or near the time of the incident, be laid for foundation for the court. Just saying when this document was made, what years it covers. That's all the foundation that is necessary in order for this still to fall under that foundation.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
The witness has testified that this is kept on a daily basis, therefore this document would be kept around the time, at the time, in fact, of the incident at Rockford World.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Again, to be able to understand for the court's reference exactly what years are on this sheet, he would have to lay that foundation for that to fall under this record, and until that foundation is laid, it would be inadmissible to do so.
Counsel, what years, can you please ask the witness what years this falls for?
Absolutely, Your Honor.
That, for the direct, this is not just for, or what days this encompasses?
Sure. Mr. Longstreet, what days does this spreadsheet?
This is the spreadsheet for our past 3 years, from 2010 to 2012.
And what did you notice when you looked at these spreadsheets with Ms. Floyd?
Well, one of the things that concerned us was, although our general admissions had gone up, our world tour admissions specifically had decreased.
Could you briefly explain what world tour tickets are for the jury?
Oh, yes. Rockford World offers 2 levels of admission. General admission for $20 will get you in the door, but the special $35 World Tour bracelet gets you access to shorter, accelerated lines in the park.
A little earlier you said that this particular kind of ticket sale had been decreasing. How much had it been decreasing by?
Well, it would actually be easier if I just showed you.
Permission for the witness to step down and make use of a demonstrative?
Any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
Mr. Longstreet, could you explain what we're looking at in this first graph?
Well, this is a representation of our World Tour ticket sales as a percentage of our total ticket sales. And as y'all can see, the percentage for 2012 is significantly lower than it's been the previous 2 years. For example, in June of 2012, 27% of our tickets sold were World Tour tickets as opposed to 31% in 2011.
Could this decrease be caused by fluctuations in the economy?
See, this is the puzzling thing, because although we were selling fewer World Tour tickets on paper, in my day-to-day operations walking around the park, I noticed that the World Tour lines that I mentioned earlier, they were just as full. In fact, they were fuller than before. And that somehow meant that there were physically more World Tour bracelets out in the park as opposed to this decreased number on our sales records, and I couldn't explain that.
Did you come up with any explanation as to why that would be?
Well, the only thing Ms. Floyd and I could figure was that somebody in the ticket booth was misrecording our ticket sales and handing out fake unnumbered bracelets that we couldn't track.
How much would this skimming scheme have cost you?
Well, I prepared another graph. And this is our profits from 2012, our profits from 2011, and the profits we should have made in 2012 if we'd sold World Tour tickets at the same rate we had the previous 2 years. But because that rate declined so dramatically, we ended up losing nearly $55,000.
Thank you, Mr. Longstreet. You may return to the stand. Permission to approach the witness and retrieve the documents tendered to the bench. Thank you. Thank you, Juan. Now, Mr. Longstreet, if an employee had the opportunity to steal $55,000, would you ordinarily conduct any kind of background checks before hiring him?
Oh yes, that's typically part of the process, but in this particular case, the employee working the ticket booth, Cameron Poole, had both been hired to Rock the World and assigned specifically to the ticket booth at the special suggestion of another of our employees, Miss Whitney Bowden.
And why did you believe Whit Bowman's recommendation?
Well, I saw Miss Bowman and Mr. Poole spend time together quite frequently, so I figured if anyone would know whether Cameron Poole would be trustworthy operating the ticket booth, it would be Miss Bowman, so I figured I could trust her.
And did she give you any reason for believing she wants to even with you?
Well, in July, actually, Miss Bowman came to me asking for a raise, in addition to the one I'd already given her that year, but I had to decline her request.
And why did you decline her request?
Well, a number of reasons. First of all, I decided to expand our annual Rock the World Summer Festival, and I had to hire on extra employees to manage that. But in addition, Miss Bowman had been caught violating Rock the World policies in the past,
And where are these policies kept, Mr. Longstreet?
in the employee manual, which I wrote.
Would you recognize this manual if I showed it to you?
Yes, I would.
Permission to approach opposing counsel on the witness? Thank you. Mr. Longstreet, can you identify this document?
Yes, this is the Rock the World employee manual.
And have any changes been made to it?
No,
Is it a fair and accurate representation?
it is.
At this point, Your Honors, I ask that the Rock the World Employee Handbook be entered into evidence as prosecution exhibit 2.
No objections.
Enter as exhibit 2.
Now, Mr. Longstreet, what policies specifically did the defendant violate?
Well, right here on the last page, it says, do not, under any circumstances, hit the blue lever marked maintenance. This blue lever will cause the ride to black out. Just don't touch it.
How did the defendant violate this rule?
Well, I caught Miss Bowman operating the Tunnel of Terror ride in this blackout mode with employees aboard, and that's highly dangerous. So I instructed Miss Bowman to never operate the Tunnel of Terror ride again.
To your knowledge, did the defendant ever operate the Tunnel of Terror ride again?
Well, on the day of the robbery, actually, August 30th, Miss Bowman came to me and asked if she could operate the Tunnel of Terror, but as I instructed her not to, I assigned her to a different ride for that day.
Are employees allowed to switch rides during the day?
No, they're not actually. Right here, it says that, reading back, under no circumstances are employees to fill in for other employees on their rides.
Then, Mr. Longstreet, is there any way the defendant could have operated the Tunnel of Terror ride on August 30th?
Well, not without deliberately violating both Rock the World policy and my own personal instructions to her to never operate it again.
Thank you, Mr. Longstreet. No further questions. I ask that I may be able to tender the document to the bench, however. Thank you.
Paige Buckley for the defense. May I inquire?
Pardon me?
Paige Buckley for the defense. May I inquire?
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Longstreet.
Good morning.
Now, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about one of the employees you mentioned on direct examination, Whit Bowman. Now, you hired Whit Bowman in 2011, correct?
Yes.
You did not hesitate to rehire Whit Bowman for the summer of 2012, right?
No, I didn't.
Then, in the summer of 2012, you also hired
Cameron Poole, correct?
That's correct, at Whit Bowman's suggestion.
When you hired Cameron Poole, you placed him in the ticket booth.
At Whit Bowman's suggestion, yes.
Now, in the summer of 2012, you realized that there was profits missing from your company, correct?
Well, to clarify, what I noticed in late July of 2012 was that our overall ticket revenues had decreased.
And that ticket revenue is the $54,000 you showed us in court today, correct?
Well, this is what ended up being the ticket revenue. This is how much ticket revenue we should have earned if we continued to sell our World Tour tickets at the same rate. So yes, that's where that $55,000 number comes from.
But Mr. Longstreet, just to be clear, you do not know exactly how much of this money was missing because strictly from the missing tickets, isn't that right?
No, this is just a projection based on the past 2 years of World Tour ticket sales rates versus what they actually were in 2012.
But this is not a definite number, correct?
No, this is not a definite number.
Permission to deconstruct the demonstrative?
You may.
Now, Mr. Longstreet, when you came to the realization that the ticket sales were not matching what happened in the park, now you automatically suspected that something was going on with the wristbands, isn't that right?
Well, based on my observations around the park, that there were more wristbands and fewer sales being recorded at the ticket booth, that was my assumption, yes.
And you suspected that the person behind this was the ticket booth operator.
One of the ticket booth operators, we weren't sure which one.
You originally suspected Cameron Poole, correct?
Yes, we did.
Now, Cameron Poole had only been working in the summer of 2012, right?
Yes, that's correct.
He had not been working the previous 2 summers?
That is also correct.
You did not notice a loss in revenue in those previous 2 summers?
Well, the only reason I noticed the loss in revenue is because the patterns didn't match up from what they had been the previous 2 years. So, no, I had nothing to compare them to.
So that's a no, or that's a yes to my question. You did not notice a loss in revenue the previous 2 years?
Well, our loss in revenue in 2012 was relative to the previous 2 years, so I had no point of reference for the previous 2 years.
All right, Mr. Longstreet. Now, throughout the summer of 2012, Whit Bowman was working in your park as a ride operator, correct?
That's correct.
She was there throughout the entire summer?
Yes.
Throughout that entire summer, you never saw Whit Bowman distribute any bracelets to customers, correct?
Well, obviously not. Miss Bowman wasn't working the ticket booth.
You never saw Whit Bowman with any bracelets, whether they were real or fake, correct?
That's correct.
You never saw Whit Bowman take any money from customers.
No.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Your Honors, I ask that my witness be able to return to his seat.
Yeah, but, wait a few moments before proceeding.
Absolutely, Your Honors.
may proceed.
Your Honor, the state calls Detective Francis Kimball to the stand. Your Honor, good evening, thanks for the state attendance. May I inquire?
You may.
Please state your name, spelling your last for the record.
I am Frances Kimball. That's Kimball.
And what's your occupation?
Well, I'm the second woman in my family to ever become a policewoman. Second woman in Breckenridge County, actually. I'm the lead detective of the Financial Crimes Unit.
And how long have you worked in Breckenridge County?
Well, I joined the force 10 years ago after graduating from the academy in the top of my class. And I've worked 6 years total in the robbery unit and 10 years total in the Financial Crimes Unit. So I'd say we've handled, upwards of 200 cases during that time.
And how did you first become involved in today's case?
Well, I was originally called into Afterworld in August of 2012 by Mr. J.C. Longstreet. He requested that I look over the financial records for any discrepancies.
And did you examine the financial records?
Yes, I did.
And what did you find?
During the course of my audit, I discovered a discrepancy in the admissions figures. This indicated to me that there was some sort of theft going on. And since the discrepancy it was in the admissions figures, that indicated that the theft was likely occurring at the ticket booth.
And did you ever verify this?
Yes, I recommended to Mr. Longstreet that he remove the employee who was operating the ticket booth, Cameron Poole, on August 30th. And Mr. Longstreet did so, replacing Cameron Poole with his accountant, Ms. Haley Floyd.
And what effect did that have on the admissions numbers that day?
Well, the numbers shot right back up to where they were supposed to be.
And did you ever find any physical evidence directly linking Cameron Poole to the crime?
Yes, some fake admissions bracelets were found in Cameron Poole's employee locker.
Now, were you at Afterworld on the evening of August 30th?
Yes,
And what happened that evening?
that was when the robbery occurred at the ticket booth. I believe Cameron Poole did it. I actually brought with me a map of Afterworld in order to lead you through the robbery and the ensuing chase.
Your Honor, permission for the witness to step down to make use of the demonstrative?
Permission granted.
Now, could you walk us through what happened that night?
Certainly. It was approximately 2000 hours or 8 p.m. in civilian time, and I was talking with Mr. Longstreet in the business office located right here. At this point, I heard screams and shouting, a general commotion coming from the area of the ticket booth, located right here on the map, about 40 feet away from where I was. So I proceeded to exit I proceeded to exit the business office and ran over to the ticket booth. As I approached, I saw an unidentified suspect running away from the ticket booth and into the park towards the Tunnel of Terror in about this direction.
And what did you find when you got to the ticket booth?
Well, as I approached the ticket booth, Miss Haley Floyd came out. She was very upset, she was shaking, had trouble speaking, and she collapsed on the ground right about here. And she kept on shouting, stop him, and pointing in the direction that I had just seen the unidentified suspect flee.
And did you pursue that suspect?
Yes, I left Miss Floyd in the capable hands of Mr. Longstreet and proceeded after the suspect and into the park.
And what happened while you were running?
Well, at approximately this point, right here, a gunshot was fired, and the crowd dropped to the ground, giving me a clear view of the suspect.
And were you able to identify the suspect later?
Yes, he was identified as Cameron Poole.
And what did Mr. Poole do?
And Mr. Poole proceeded to run past the ride operator of the Tunnel of Terror and into the Tunnel of Terror ride.
And to your knowledge, who at this point was operating the Tunnel of Terror?
Whit Bowman.
And were you able to apprehend Mr. Poole?
I know, unfortunately I was not. The ride went into blackout mode and Cameron Poole was able to escape out of the employee access door in the back of the ride.
Now, what, to your knowledge, what actions did Whit Bowman take that assisted in Cameron Poole's escape?
Well, you see, Whit Bowman was not assigned to work the Tunnel of Terror ride on August 30th, 2012. Bowman was assigned to work a different ride. However, at approximately 8 p.m., shortly before the robbery occurred, Bowman left the ride that she was supposed to be operating and proceeded over to the Tunnel of Terror, which she then took control of. And after Cameron Poole exited the Tunnel of Terror through the back exit door, Bowman activated blackout mode on the ride, turning the lights off while the ride kept on running. This prevented either myself or anyone else from apprehending Cameron Poole.
Your Honor, I'd ask the witness to be able to take proceedings. Now, what did you do after Cameron Poole escaped?
I proceeded to secure the premises and then I interviewed the various witnesses.
And did you ever interview Ms. Floyd?
Yes, I did.
And what did you learn?
I interviewed Ms. Floyd shortly after the robbery had occurred, so Ms. Floyd was still rather upset and had trouble forming a coherent narrative. She was still shaking, she had trouble speaking properly. However, she did confirm that Cameron Poole had robbed her in the ticket booth at knife point, saying, "Give me the money, I'll carve up your face."
And did you ever interview the defendant?
Yes, I did. I interviewed the defendant after I interviewed Ms. Floyd.
And what did you learn in this interview?
Well, the defendant made 3 specific claims. First, she said that she had been assigned to work the Tunnel of Terror ride. Second, she said that she did not know Cameron Poole well at all. And third, she said that she did not hear a gunshot.
And to your knowledge, did you ever verify any of these?
Yes, unfortunately, the first 2 claims that the defendant made were in fact false, as I discovered during the course of my investigation. Bowman had not been assigned to work the Tunnel of Terror ride, and as you just heard from Mr. Longstreet, she had in fact been told not to ever operate this ride. Secondly, Cameron Poole did know Whitney Bowman, as I found out in the course of my investigation. They had worked together previously.
And were you ever able to ascertain whether or not the defendant would actually hear the gunshot that night?
As far as I know, the defendant in fact did not hear a gunshot on the night of August 30th.
And what other physical evidence did you collect in your investigation?
After I interviewed the defendant, I noticed a cell phone sitting on the table inside the operating booth of the Tunnel of Terror. I proceeded to investigate the cell phone. I examined it, discovered that it was a prepaid cell phone purchased from MGK Wireless. It was the 4Y model, probably been purchased from a convenience store or local Walmart.
And were you ever able to ascertain the ownership of this phone?
Yes, I asked Ms. Bowman, and she initially denied that the phone was hers, but she did later admit ownership.
Your Honor, at this time, I would ask to approach the witness with the document for identification.
Go ahead.
Detective Kimball, could you identify this for us?
Yes, this is a screenshot of the text messages that I accessed on Bowman's cell phone on August 30th, 2012.
And what day were these text messages sent?
August 30th,
And what time were these text messages, the second portion?
8:19 p.m.
And were you able to ascertain the declarant of the statements in green?
The statements in green are from the defendant, Whit Bowman.
And were you ever able to ascertain the declarant of the statements that were in tan?
Yes, they were Cameron Poole's.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation.
Your Honor, I'm about to explain lay foundation with this witness as to how she came to that conclusion.
What was the question again?
Was she able to ascertain who was the declarant of these statements on the record?
I will give you a chance to lay the foundation. If the foundation's not met, then I'm going to sustain his objection.
Yes, sir. Now, when were these statements made?
8:19 p.m.
And when had the robbery just taken place?
The robbery had occurred approximately 4 minutes before these text messages were sent.
And is there any reference to Rocky Road in these text messages?
Yes, earlier there is a reference to TOT, Tunnel of Terror, which is a ride in Rockter World.
And what is the name of the person, the contact name on the phone?
SCAM was the only contact listed.
And what is the name of the alleged co-conspirator of the defendant today?
Cameron Poole.
And who had just left Rockter World at 8:19 p.m.?
I'm going to have to sustain his objection because SCAM doesn't really relate to his name other than the C. I mean,
Your Honor, that's
Cam?
not the only evidence actually that we're in violation of. The time that the text messages were sent was just 4 minutes after the robbery, and the text messages referenced the person leaving the park. The person that left the park at just a few minutes before the text messages were sent is Cameron Poole. He was the only person that left the park.
so how are they relevant? How do we know that Cameron Poole is sent those?
Your Honor, the document is relevant because it shows that there is a conspiracy between the defendant and Cameron Poole, showing that Whit Bowman, the defendant, assisted Cameron Poole in his escape, saying, "I'm out to talk to you, thanks." So he was thanking Whit Bowman for her assistance in his escape, showing that there was a conspiracy, which is a pertinent fact in the case today.
But my question is, how do you know, or what identifying factors are that this was indeed from Mr. Poole?
Your Honor, the person that had just escaped the park at that time that the text messages were sent was Cameron Poole. The text messages referenced So the person that had just left the park at that time, just 4 minutes after the robbery, was Cameron Poole. And these text messages reference the person who left the park at that time. So clearly, it was Cameron Poole. Also, Your Honor, I would direct your court's attention to the case law State versus Beckett, which shows that we only need to prove the declarant or authenticity of statements entered into evidence by circumstantial evidence and not necessarily direct.
Okay. You can proceed.
So, what did the statement say?
The statement says, "I'm out, TTYL, talk to you later."
I would object at this point, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Your Honor, this statement is not hearsay because under Rule 801 D2E, it is a statement between two co-conspirators in furtherance of the conspiracy. This statement was made by Cameron Poole to Whit Bowman just after the robbery, thanking her for her assistance, and under State versus Owens, a conspiracy has been met by proponents of the evidence.
Your Honor, sufficient evidence to prove that Cameron Poole is Whit Bowman's co-conspirator has not been laid at all.
Then, Your Honor, under
And that has to be laid for that exception to be met.
Then, Your Honor, under State versus Owens, by proponents of the evidence, we are allowed to continue that, that consideration of the evidence of the conspiracy throughout the rest of the trial